Welcome to Occult Archives. We like to call this a deep dive. You know those books from history, the talked about ones, maybe even a little bit feared. We kind of crack them open for you.
Yeah.
No dusty tomes here.
Yeah, we do the digging.
Yeah.
And bring you the gems, so to speak.
Exactly. It's like, think of us as your, well, guides through those pages. You know, the ones you might not want to flip through on your own. I'm your host, and today we're going deep into Kabbalah Unveiled.
A classic. And a good one to really get into the heart of, well, a lot of esoteric thought, actually.
Definitely. So for you listening, this isn't like just a surface skim. This is really tailored. It's for you. It's into the core of this Jewish doctrine, this esoteric tradition, the Kabbalah. And the word itself, Kabbalah Hebrew, means to receive, which is really telling, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It hints at the way this knowledge was passed down, For centuries, it wasn't written. It was, well, whispers, mentorship, direct transmission.
Right? Like secrets in the air. And that makes Kabbalah Unveiled from 1887 all the more interesting.
Right.
Because it landed during, well, a huge shift. Science exploding, but also this pull towards the occult.
Like a tension, almost. Could these two worlds, the material and the spiritual, could they, well, meet?
The book itself kind of hints at that, doesn't it? Malkuth is in Kether, Kether is in Malkuth, that line. Like, however high you go, the physical world's still there, and vice versa.
It suggests this deep connection, that the physical and the divine, they're not separate.
Right, not separate at all. And the author, well, they weren't just writing in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Connected to some big names in Freemasonry, Kabbalism, Dr. Woodman, Dr. Wynne Westcott. These were just, armchair scholars. They had an esoteric school. They were putting this stuff into practice.
It's living knowledge for them, a system, not just dusty books.
Absolutely. And they did something, well, pretty huge. Kabbalah Unveiled was the first translation of the Zohar, that's a key Kabbalistic text, into English. Or any modern European language, actually. It's like, boom, centuries of thought suddenly available to, well, everyone.
Opened a lot of doors, that's for sure.
So where do we even start? Well, there's this thing called the literal Kabbalah. I think of it like the Kabbalah's like a secret code, but it's hidden in plain sight, in language itself.
Okay, so the literal Kabbalah, yeah, it really focuses on the Hebrew alphabet, right? Because that's the sacred language for, well, a lot of the core Kabbalistic texts. And Hebrew's mainly consonantal. So you've got your consonants, and then vowels are often little points.
That's diacritical marks or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Each letter, it's not just a sound. It has this numerical value, too.
Okay, wait. Each letter's a number.
Yep. And that brings us to gematria, which gets pretty wild. Every word, right, because it's made of letters, well, it's a number too. Add them up, you got your word's number.
So, like, a word is also a code.
Kind of. And flip it around, every number can be a word or a bunch of words if they add up the same way. It's like the universe is speaking in numbers and letters at the same time.
And that's gematria.
That's gematria.
You see that kind of thinking elsewhere too, right? Like the whole number of the beast thing in Revelation.
Exactly. People have been fascinated by this for a long time.
For sure. Now, in Kabbalah Unveiled, you'll see the author using Roman letters for those Hebrew and Chaldee ones, like Q for Kof.
Yeah, it's to help, readers who aren't used to the Hebrew script, like a bridge to understanding the pronunciation, I guess.
Okay, so that's step one. Then there's Notarikon. This is, to me, one of the coolest things in the Kabbalah. It's like finding hidden messages, but they're right there in front of you.
Right. Notarikon, it actually comes from Latin, a shorthand writer. Basically, you make new words, even sentences, from the first or last letters of another word.
Like an acronym, kinda.
Yeah, but more mystical. And the text uses Brasheth, the first word of Genesis, as an example. They give a basic interpretation, neutral. But then they show these Christian interpretations developed by Solomon Mir ben Moses, who later became known as Prosper Rugers.
Wait, so they're using the same word but getting totally different meanings?
Exactly. And for Kabbalists, those reinterpretations, they're not just curiosities. They reveal deeper truths hidden in the text.
Like the surface is just the beginning. There's always more to uncover.
Always more. And then you've got Tamira, which is another way of finding these hidden connections.
Okay, what's Tamira?
It's all about rearranging letters. Like you take a word and shuffle the letters around in a specific way, and boom, you've got a new word, a new meaning. They use ATH-BSH as an example. That's a specific permutation system. HSSHK turns into BBL, which is Babel in Jeremiah.
It's like the letters are fluid, right?
Yeah.
They can shift and change. And the meaning changes with them.
Exactly. There's this potential for multiple truths hidden within the same letters.
Okay, so Gematria, Notarikon, Tamura, and then there's the Kabbalah of the Nine Chambers. Sounds kind of like a secret society.
Well, it is pretty secretive. AIQ, BKR is the Hebrew. This one, it's all about arranging the letters in a grid, 9 compartments, and then you can use it as a cipher, where dots in the grid represent specific letters. So, a specific pattern of dots becomes code for a word.
Like a dot-to-dot puzzle, but for spies?
Something like that.
Man, and it's not even just the arrangement, right? The shapes of the Hebrew letters themselves, they have symbolic meaning, too.
Oh, absolutely. The text even talks about how the shape of Aleph, the first letter, looks like a vav between a yod and a daleth. It's literally the word IVD, visually.
Wow, so like every little curve and line has a reason.
Yeah, the visual and the linguistic, they're deeply connected in the Kabbalah.
Okay, so one tiny change in how you write a letter, and boom, the whole meaning can change.
They give the example of the final M in LMRBH. It totally changes the geometrical value and therefore the meaning.
Okay, so that's all the literal Kabbalah. But then there's this other thing, the unwritten Kabbalah, which, well, sounds even more mysterious.
Right. Because, well, it wasn't written down. Imagine that. All this knowledge passed down orally, teacher to student, for centuries. Kabbalah Unveiled doesn't give away too much about the specifics, which I guess makes sense. But they do mention that before Rabbi Simeon ben Jachai, none of the Kabbalah was written down.
So like a whole universe of knowledge just floating around in people's
right.
heads. Wow.
Makes you wonder what was lost, doesn't it?
For sure. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Kabbalah Unveiled lays out some pretty fundamental concepts, and one that really jumps out is this idea of negative versus positive existence. Sounds pretty philosophical right off the bat.
It is. It's about trying to wrap your head around the divine before, well, anything existed. Before manifestation, before form. They use these terms, AIN, which is like nothingness, negative existence, AIN SVP, which is like limitless expansion, going outward forever, and then AIN SVP AVR, which is like illimitable light, light without end.
It's kind of like trying to describe something that's, well, beyond description, isn't it?
Exactly, and that's the point. It's trying to point towards something we can't really grasp with our limited human minds. The absolute, the unknowable.
Okay. So like acknowledging that there's this ultimate mystery we can't fully understand.
Right. And from this idea of the absolute, they get to the first principle, which is expressed by this phrase, AHI, AARR, AHI. It's often translated as I am that I am.
Yeah, that's a powerful phrase, but the text offers a different translation, right?
They suggest a more literal one, existence is existence, or even I am he who is. This name, Ehe, Asher, Ehe, it's like the bedrock of Kabbalah, a statement of pure being.
Okay. And the author also brings in this guy, Eliphaz Levi, who was into occult philosophy. He had some thoughts on God from a Kabbalistic view, right?
Yeah, Levi really emphasizes the idea that God isn't just this, distant, abstract force. It's an intelligent being, a living God, full of love, present everywhere, but still distinct from the creation. It's like God is in everything, but God is also beyond everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Like,
Yeah.
we're part of God, but God is bigger than all of us put together.
Right. And Levi also talks about how, our little human brains, they can only go so far. To truly understand the infinite, you need faith and you need, well, mystical insight.
Like, science can't measure everything. Some things you got to feel them or intuit them or, I don't know, something more than just thinking.
Exactly. And Kabbalah Unveiled definitely gets into that territory.
Okay, so next up, the book talks about the structure of the divine and the soul. And there's some really interesting correspondences, like a map of how everything fits together.
Oh, yeah, some really cool stuff here. So first off, they connect the human form to the tetragrammaton, that 4-letter name of God, the one you're not supposed to pronounce, YHVH.
Yeah, that one.
So they say the arms and shoulders, those are like the letter H. The torso is like the V. And the legs, the final H.
Wait, so our bodies are literally spelled out by God's name. That's wild.
It suggests that humanity, like in its very shape, is a reflection of the divine, a microcosm of the macrocosm.
Okay, that's deep. And then there's this connection between the soul and the Sephiroth.
Yeah.
Right, those 10 emanations of divine energy. But for someone who's never heard of the Sephiroth, what are they, really?
Imagine 10 spheres, all connected, and each one is a different aspect of God, like qualities, forces, ways that the infinite becomes finite. So you've got Kether, the crown, that's the first one, and then Malkuth, the kingdom, that's the physical world. And in between, there's wisdom, understanding, mercy, judgment, all these different qualities.
So it's like a map of creation, in a way.
Exactly, a map of how God becomes the universe.
Okay, that makes sense. And these Sephiroth, they're ultimately expressed in a trinity: Kether, the crown; Tiferet, the king; and Malkuth, the queen.
Right. Those three are like the key players. And that divine trinity is reflected in us too, in the three parts of the human soul.
Neshama, Ruach, and Nefesh. It's like different levels of being, right?
Yeah, exactly. Neshama is the highest part. It's connected to Kether, the intellectual world. Ruach is the middle. It's the emotional and moral world linked to Tefereth. And Nefesh is the lowest, tied to Yesod, the material world, our basic life force.
Wow. Okay, so we're like mini-maps of the divine, too. That's a lot to take in.
It is, but it's also kind of beautiful, right? This idea that everything's connected, that we carry a spark of the divine within us.
I like that. And then there's this other idea, the idea of pre-existent souls, androgynous souls. Like, before we're born, we're both male and female at the same time.
It's a concept that pops up in a lot of mystical traditions. The idea is, in that primal state, we're whole, we're complete. But then when we come down into the physical world, we split.
So we're like looking for our other half.
In a way, yeah. And marriage, then, it becomes this potential reunion, a chance to, well, become whole again.
Huh. That adds a whole other layer to relationships, doesn't it?
It does. And it kind of raises the stakes, don't you think?
For sure. Okay, let's get to these big guys. Macroprosopus and Microprosopus. They sound like, I don't know, characters from a fantasy novel.
They are pretty epic. Macroprosopus, that means vast countenance, the great face. Basically, it's Kether, the crown. It's the most fundamental aspect of the divine, pure, undifferentiated. And then there's Microprosopus, the lesser countenance, the small face. That one's made up of the next 6 Sephiroth.
So if Macroprosopus is the source, then Microprosopus is, what, a more focused version?
You could say that, like a way for the divine to interact with creation in a more specific way. And Kabbalah Unveiled is very clear. Microprosopus only shines because of Macroprosopus. It's a reflection, you know.
Okay, so the 6 days of creation in Genesis, they line up with the 6 Sephiroth of Macroprosopus.
Exactly. That's why the Star of David, those 2 triangles, they're called the sign of the macrocosm.
Because it represents creation, right?
Right.
Now, the text goes into some like super detailed descriptions of Macroprosopus, but it's kind of like trying to describe, I don't know, a black hole. You can talk about it, but you can't really picture it.
It is tough to visualize, but the imagery they use is powerful. So they describe the head of Macroprosopus, which is Kether, filled with this crystalline dew. That's the creative R, the divine light coming from the Ein Safar. And then they get into, you know, seemingly small details, like his nostrils are these mighty galleries where the spirit rushes forth.
Like God's breath is creating the universe, kind of.
Yeah, and they connect that breath to the flow of divine energy down to Malkuth, the physical world.
And that spirit, it's the same breath of life from Genesis, right? They even connect that opening verse, Brashith Bra Elhim, to the creation of the 6 Sephiroth of Macroprosopus.
And they're saying that Genesis, it's not just about the physical world, it's about God, like unfolding, becoming more defined.
Wow. Okay, so the universe is like God's thought made real.
Something like that. And Microprosopus is like the blueprint, I guess you could say. It's got those 6 aspects that correspond to 6 titles of Macroprosopus.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connections here. It's a lot, but it's making sense.
It is a lot. The Kabbalah doesn't mess around.
For sure. Now, what about judgments and rigors? There's got to be some darkness to balance out all this light, right?
Oh, yeah. Kabbalah Unveiled talks about masculine rigors and feminine rigors. So masculine ones, they're strong at first, but then they ease up. Feminine ones, it's the opposite. They start subtle, but they get more intense over time.
Okay. Why the difference?
Well, they use the divine name VIH as an example. Masculine version, 2 letters, long sound, then short. Feminine version, 1 letter, the yod, and it's small, kind of hidden within the hust. And these are tied to judgments, right? Like when the divine flow is limited, things get tough.
Limited by what?
By, well, our own limitations, I guess you could say. Our inability to receive the full force of the divine.
Okay, so we're kind of getting in our own way.
Something like that. And to soften these judgments, you need the ancient one, which is connected to IH, or Yah.
Those are the first 2 letters of the tetragrammaton.
Yeah,
right?
representing the Divine Father and the highest Sephira, Kether.
Makes sense. So, like, going back to the source helps balance things out.
Exactly. And get this, they tie the serpent in the Garden of Eden to the letters yod and vow being added to the he of the bride. Like symbolically, that's where the impurity comes in.
So the serpent's messing with the divine flow.
You could see it that way. It's creating this imbalance.
Man, the Kabbalah is full of surprises. Okay, so the beard of Macroprosopus. The text goes into a lot of detail about this beard. It's like more than just facial hair, right?
Yeah, it's a whole symbol system. So these are white locks flowing, going up and down, and there are 13 portions. That number's important because it's the gematria of ACHD, which means unity.
13 portions for unity.
Right. And no one lock is higher than the others. It's all perfect harmony and balance. And then there are 13 drops of pure balm flowing down from this beard, and they contain, like, all of existence.
Wait, the universe is inside God's beard.
Symbolically, yeah. And they connect this number 13 to the 7th month, which becomes 13 in the supernal world, and to the 13 gates of mercy that open on the Day of Atonement.
So like there's a time when forgiveness is more accessible?
Yeah, you could say that. And then they talk about the supernal letters H and V. H is surrounded by spirit, and V is this flashing flame, the start of judgment.
Okay, and then the tetragrammaton, IHVH, it's written out in full, like expanded, which adds up to BN, 52, and that's comprehended in Macroprosopus.
Right.
But the IVD of the ancient one, that's hidden.
Right. It's like there are levels to this. Some things are easier to access than others.
So some divine knowledge is like top secret.
You could say that. And then they get into the wind blowing and the spark of flame, which represent Macroprosopus coming from the light of Macroprosopus. The peaceful habitation is the ancient one. And there's this weird thing. They spell thine eyes without the yod in this context.
Okay, that's specific.
It is. And then 3 flames from the nose of Macroprosopus. And in the ears, there are pathways for both good and evil. And they even say the A and I, the I in Isaiah, that's referring to Macroprosopus because it involves the bride, Malkuth.
Man, this is complex.
It's the Kabbalah.
Fair enough. Okay, let's zoom in on Macroprosopus's forehead, eyes, nose, and ears.
Okay.
So the forehead, they call it Ratson, which means willpower. And it rules 420 worlds. And get this, it's uncovered when the Israelites pray on Sabbath evenings to calm down God's wrath.
That's a powerful image, right? Like direct access to the divine will.
For sure. And the eyes.
2 eyes, but 1, always watching. No eyebrows, no eyelashes. And they're bathed in 3 supernal white brilliances, which also illuminate Macroprosopus's eyes.
Okay, so even Macroprosopus needs light from Macroprosopus.
Yeah, it's all connected.
And the nose.
3 flames rushing out. Could be the breath, could be judgment.
And the ears.
Pathways for good and evil. But they're closed on the outside. Like they only hear the inner voice. It's all about the arcanum, the secret knowledge.
Okay, so that's Macroprosopus. Now back to Macroprosopus's beard. They go into even more detail this time, talking about 9 specific confirmations. And these were supposedly used by King David to defeat his enemies.
Yeah, like spiritual warfare.
So the beard is, what, a weapon?
Well, it represents power, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So these 9 confirmations, they symbolize mercy when the hairs stand out and judgment when the harsher hairs are visible. And the whole beard, it's this holy white beard shining with both mercy and judgment.
Okay. And then they talk about the hair on Macroprosopus's head, right? How it's hard and curly, representing the 3 forms of the brain.
And there are different paths within the beard itself. Some of them are tough to get through, representing spiritual challenges, I guess.
And then the 13th confirmation, this one hangs down to the chest, hiding the face, except for these 2 things they call brilliant and beautiful apples.
And that beard is nourished by the oil of dignity, flowing down from Macroprosopus's beard.
Always connected, huh?
Always.
And this arrangement, it starts with 9 parts, but then becomes 22 when the most holy oil shines on it. That number 22, it's from Jacob's blessing, right, with the 22.
Right. And the hairs themselves are hard, rigid. It's about subduing judgments. The whole beard is like a hero fighting for what's right.
Okay, so the beard is a warrior beard. Now, the lips and mouth, they're different, right? No hair there.
Nope. And they're described as red and rosy, like roses. And the divine spirit flows out from the mouth.
Okay, so we've got the beard, the mouth. It's like a whole anatomy lesson, but it's all symbolic.
And every part has its own meaning.
All right, next up, masculine and feminine principles. Kabbalah Unveiled is very clear. The woman, who they call Malkuth, or the bride, she's the receiver. All the divine energy flows into her.
She's the vessel, the container. They compare her to a mother holding her child, nurturing, giving life.
So she's like essential for creation to happen.
Absolutely. And they call her the lesser chakma, which means there's a male chakma too.
Male and female wisdom. Okay.
And then the text gets into, well, anatomy again. 2 thighs with 2 kidneys and 2 testicles. That's where the masculine power is.
Okay.
And they call them Sabaoth, the armies, which are connected to Netzach and Hod, and Tifereth, that's the tetragrammaton itself.
Man, it's all connected, isn't it?
Everything is. And then the male organ that's connected to Yesod, the foundation. And it's said to mitigate the feminine principle.
Mitigate, what does that mean?
Well, I guess balance it out, maybe. And the male desire is always toward the female.
Makes sense.
And it's through Yesod that the male enters the female, in a place they called Tzion in Jerusalem.
Which is symbolically the womb.
Exactly.
So creation happens through that union.
Right.
And that's why the tetragrammaton Sabaoth is Yesod, the foundation.
It all comes back to that.
Amazing. Now, the book also mentions resurrection and transformation. They even talk about Rabbi Skimion dying surrounded by fire and light, and the idea that worlds are created and destroyed all the time.
Yeah, that's getting into some deep cosmology. The idea that, what we see now, this isn't the only universe there's ever been. And maybe not the last either.
Whoa. Okay, final thing. Mercy and judgment. Tzedek and Meshaphat.
Big concepts.
So Kabbalah Unveiled says that the world needs tzedek, justice, to survive. But when the male and female principles are separated and Meshaphat, judgment isn't balanced with justice, things go bad.
Right. Like the world needs both. You can't have one without the other.
So what happens when they're balanced?
Well, tzedek becomes tzedekah, which is like liberality, righteousness.
Yeah.
And the world is also tempered by cheese, which is mercy, loving kindness.
Okay, so it's all about finding that balance.
Exactly. And they give the example of the Edomite kings who represent pure judgment, no mercy. They get wiped out until benignity comes along, Hadar. And he's balanced out by his wife, Mechtubal, whose name means, like, made better by benignity.
So even the bad guys need a little bit of good to survive.
It seems that way.
Now, what about the hand and arm of the tetragrammaton?
So the right hand, that's for good stuff, benevolence.
Yeah.
The left hand comes in when things aren't so good.
Left hand for punishment, right hand for blessings.
Basically. And they have this line about severe judgments. The arcanum of tetragrammaton is over those who fear him.
Heavy stuff.
Definitely.
And then there's the Sabbath.
Ah, the Sabbath. That's when the king, Macroprosopus, and the mother, Malkuth, they come together and things get balanced out.
So the Sabbath is like a cosmic chill pill.
You could say that. The text even says that when God wants to start the Sabbath, he creates spirits and demons, but they're not finished until the mother sits with the king.
So it's like even demons need a day of rest.
Apparently.
Okay, last few things. Kabbalah Unveiled describes the perfect man, Adam, as having all the Sefirotic crowns in perfect balance. And the righteous souls, they come from this holy body.
Right. And the higher crowns, they're like the 5 fingers against the other 5.
5 against 5.
And they say the just man can represent Macroprosopus, who contains the 6 Sephiroth. But there are impure crowns outside the body, and they pollute those who come near. But the righteous, they can help bring those impure ones back into the body.
So like helping lost souls find their way back to the light.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And they talk about tempering, like with metals, gold, and silver. It's about connecting judgment with mercy.
Always about balance, huh?
Always. And then there's this whole thing about the sons of the Elohim and the daughters of Adam, Adam, the special Adam, and how their union had consequences.
Like messing up the divine order.
Yeah, something like that. And they say that when the tetragrammaton repented for making Adam, it was really about limiting the supernal Adam.
Okay. And then wisdom, chokmah, dwelling with prudence, shekinah. And Adam being the inner place where spirit ruach lives.
Right. And the Ancient One has 3 heads in one, symbolizing the triad.
And last but not least, they say you shouldn't reveal the arcana to just anyone.
Only to those who are ready, I guess.
Makes sense. Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive into Kabbalah Unveiled. I mean, we talked about the literal Kabbalah, the unwritten Kabbalah, the nature of existence, the divine, those crazy figures, Macroprosopus and Microprosopus, all the symbolism, especially the beard, and of course, mercy and judgment.
It's a lot to digest, but it's all pointing toward this incredibly intricate and symbolic understanding of the universe. Like, everything has meaning, from the smallest letter to the biggest cosmic structure.
It's definitely a different way of seeing the world.
That's for sure.
So for you listening, hopefully you've got a better grasp of some of these Kabbalistic ideas.
Yeah.
It's a tradition that, well, it makes you think. It challenges you.
And it's still relevant today. Like, think about that axiom, Malkuth is in Kether. How can understanding the most basic, everyday stuff in your life, how can that give you insight into your highest potential, your spiritual goals?
And the other way around too, right?
Mm.
How can your spiritual understanding help you deal with the everyday stuff?
Exactly. It's all connected.
It is. And hey, think about all the symbolism we talked about today. Now that you know this stuff, you might start seeing it everywhere. In language, in symbols, even in, I don't know, random events. It's like a secret code to the universe.
Maybe it is. And we encourage you to keep exploring these texts, keep diving into the Kabbalah. There's always something new to discover.
Absolutely. Until our next deep dive, thanks for joining us.
Until next time.